back, and we're moving into our first conversation for today, having on set with us the Mayor of Belize City Council, Mayor Darrell Bradley. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning and thank you very much.
So Mayor, quite a bit happening in the city at this time, and I think where we should start is looking at the trade license, because we've got to talk about finances, we've got to talk about how businesses are affected. And this has actually been something from you first got into office that you have been trying to work towards a resolution. So let's talk about the upcoming changes in trade license fees.
Well, we're pretty excited. As you rightly said, that we have been working on it for the last 5 years. It's actually been something, when I first got into office, when we did a series of consultations, it was something that the business community really championed as a major priority for them. They had complained on the arbitrariness of the trade license fee, that it was determined by a board and they really just randomly affixed figures. And they also complained that the 25% rental value is something that's just too burdensome, that the actual dollar amount of the tax is too high. So that from then to now, we had a task force which was comprised of members of the City Council together with members of the Chamber of Commerce. And I think when this really got a significant amount of traction, when the Office of the Prime Minister got involved and Ambassador Daniel Guterres really championed a lot of the issues, looked at different types of models in different jurisdictions. We actually brought in several consultants from Canada and from the United States who showed us different variations of how the tax could work. And by and large, the consensus was that we wanted to move towards something that was a fixed fee, something that was set in law.
That you could budget for.
You could budget for, and that was very predictable and that was very transparent. Nothing that had to be calculated overly. That people could readily appreciate the nuance of it, and I could say, okay, this is what my trade license fee is based on. And so what the amendment entails, aside from other critical pieces in the legislation itself, there will be a fixed table. So the section of the law that speaks to a 25% annual rental value of your tax, which equates to 3 months rent, which is very high. What it will be is that it will be a fixed schedule, so that if you fit into certain rental brackets, it sets your trade license fee. The lowest fee is $150 and the highest fee is $60,000. Right now, a business pays $180,000 in trade license, so that their fee will go down from $180,000 to the maximum, which is $60,000. So that a lot of businesses will see some substantial reductions. But I think a major win with this, even though it's not ideal, a major win is the predictability of it.
I recall when this process, when the consultation was initiated, one of the challenges was charging a fee based on rental value, because it's not necessarily your location will impact your rental value and the type of business that you're doing from that particular space. And you had spoken, I believe at that time, at looking at the amount of business, how much revenue they're making as one of the potential predictors for the license fees. How was that eliminated and you went back to rental value?
Well, I think it's an excellent point, because one of the things that members of the private sector commented in several of the consultations is that I could have a large square footage, but I don't sell anything. If business is really bad, if we're in so-called slow season, I am familiar in terms of the retail business. People usually make their money in Christmas and so forth. If you're dealing with the summer months when nothing really is selling, but you have a large space, you're really burdened by this tax. Whereas you have very small types of businesses, real estate agents, law firms, who are lucrative, but they pay a low tax because they have a low footprint in the municipality. So that one of the model that we were really looking at is income, having an income-based trade license, so that you could really gauge the amount that people would be paying based on what they would be making, so that it's something that is more palatable for them. We also were looking at basing it on the amount of employees that you have, because that's a good indicator. We wanted something easy. One of the problems that when we went down that road was that some of the businesses didn't necessarily wanted to share with us their business information. They're prepared to do that with business tax and general sales tax, but they didn't really want to disclose that to the municipality. But I think on a larger scale, one of the things that I would want to say is we're trying to move away from the municipality, at the municipal level, from taxes based on trade license, and we're trying to move towards user fees. You've heard me talk previously about tolls, and you've heard me talk about parking meters. I think that the trade license, the concept on a whole, even though we have reform, the concept of on a whole is very disastrous to business. You're actually taxing business. And so what you would want to do, because you want to generate business within your space, is that you would want to make it easier for business to come in. You actually want to have less taxes on businesses. You still need the income so that you would tax other things. So that if I use a parking spot, I don't mind paying a fee for that because that's a user-based tax. It doesn't affect everybody. And if I use a road, then I should pay a toll because it goes for the maintenance of the road, rather than taxing something as very significant to us than the business community.
You know, there are a lot of benefits for the business community that comes out of it, especially the predictability of the fees. But talk to us about the benefits for the City Council itself in terms of the framework and, you know, development and innovation.
Well, I think that it's very beneficial from the municipality standpoint. And one of the things that I really impressed upon the council and in the consultations is that we need to embrace ease of business protocols. You would have heard me come on the show previously. We talked about the CARILED program. We got major support from CARILED for this reform here. They sponsored several of the consultations coming in. And I think one of the problems of a municipality is that we embrace the image as being a tax collector. And we need to change that paradigm so that we are a facilitator and a stimulator of business. So that, yes, we need the revenue, but as opposed to taxing the 100 people who pay their taxes, if we would reduce the tax and grow that pool to 1,000, we actually would collect more on a bottom line. So that the overall idea of this reform is that this is one in a series of policies from the municipality being supported by the Office of the Prime Minister to really ensure that Belize City is a place where business can thrive. And it's not only that we want to benefit business, but that we see economic development as being the vehicle for social development and transformation. Because you look at the amount of jobs that are created in your economy if you have more business, the amount of sustainability that creates, the taxes that generates coming back into the municipality, and we're able to have more intervention programs.
Now, what has been done to ensure that small and micro businesses won't be affected by the new regime on the licensing fees?
Well, one of the things is that most tiers of ranges will experience up to a 30% reduction, so that right away the small businesses would experience a reduction. In addition to that, there are other provisions in the legislation to provide for, as opposed to paying the tax in advance, you pay it in arrears. So that currently as it operates, as you register your business, you have to pay me your tax even before you sell one burger or you take one fare or anything like that. Now what it provides for is that you could pay the tax at the end of that year, so that you actually have that year as a grace period. We're doing other things at the municipality in terms of we're creating a help desk, and also to help people to deal with business operations smoother, because we really want to target small business development as a vehicle for creating opportunity within Belize City.
Now, Mayor Bradley, let me, the conversation in general, when we talk about the development in the country and challenges we face, has been a lot about corruption and public officers and whatnot. What are your safety nets established at the City Council, that there aren't personal favors or transactions taking place with reductions, as we have known to take place before? It all depends on who you know, how fast you get something, and the price you'd pay.
Well, I think one of the major wins again with the legislation is that it's set in stone. When you have a system which is based on the calculation of 25% of your annual rental value, that depends on a lot of people. An inspector has to go to your premises, they have to measure, they have to do a lot of things. When you have a table like this actually bodes well for good administration and the reduction of corruption, because you're not dealing with any inspector, any calculation. All I have to do is look at the table. What is my rental value? That's the fee that I will pay. If it's $1,000, if it's $1,800, so no board sets that fee. So that for those purposes, it creates a great degree of confidence in the administration of the taxing system in Belize City.
Are there any new incentives to encourage businesses to buy into this new protocol? I mean, for some businesses, they might think, yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
And for other people who are used to whatever it is they were doing and it was benefiting them, they might not be too, willing to buy in. So,
well, on a whole, I felt that this was one thing that the business community was
Really?
unified in their opposition for. I mean, we went to meetings and people were quite upset about this. And this has been actually something that people have been talking about since I can remember as a young child, that it has been very burdensome on business. So that on all accounts, I think that it will benefit everybody. And we're putting in place certain protocols. This evening at Battlefield Park at 5:30, we're going to have a consultation in relation to the rollout of the legislation so that people understand what the table will mean. They understand how to apply the table. One of the things that we're developing also is a rent book. The law provides that all municipalities should have a rent book so that the idea of a rental figure is not determined by anyone. It's actually set in stone. We will have a rent book that says, okay, in this area, it's $1 per square foot, it's $20 per square foot, so that there could be a great degree of transparency to the process. Another thing that we are putting in place is that we are streamlining the appeals process, so that if there is a rate that you fall into and you're saying that I don't fall into that rate, that there could be an objective and speedy remedy so that you can get relief immediately. And we're setting in stone protocols to say that that process has to be completed within 14 days. So that if you have a challenge to the table or to your assessment or to wherever it is, within 14 days, you have to get a response from a tribunal, which is made up of a magistrate and 2 independently appointed persons.
Now, what is the expected outcome from the consultation tonight? Will any concerns that are brought up at this point be integrated into the potential rollout for the legislation?
Definitely, because one of the things that we want to do, we've had quite a bit of consultations in relation to the coining of the legislation. Now we want to have a series of public awareness discussions in relation to how this would impact particular people. It will impact the municipality also because we are crunching our numbers to ensure that we can comfortably afford reductions in the trade license bill. But so for us, there's issues. But we want to make sure that there's no confusion, and this is why we're doing it now. It's 5 months before the legislation will go into effect. This will take effect the 1st of January 2018. And so for 5 months, people can look at it. They can look at their way they fit into the reductions, how substantial the reductions will be. Our forms will be different. There will be some documentation more that we will require from businesses. One of the things that we've seen is that a lot of people, because the tax was so high, lied on their rental value. So that we're dealing with all of those things, and we want to provide information, and we want to get feedback from members of the public over this next 5 months, so that on January 1st, when the law goes into effect, everything takes a smooth course going forward.
Will there be a preliminary assessment as to what the true rental value is for the businesses that are established?
Well, currently what it is that whatever your current rental value is, we're going to take that.
Okay.
So that everybody should experience, because of that, a reduction. And it's actually set in the formula that where if somebody was here, we actually calculated into it a 15% reduction so that people will get some sort of reprieve in terms of the taxation. I have felt as a small business owner myself that paying 25% of your rental value just is unreasonable for trying to promote the kind of business growth that we want to see. And I think that this is some of the things that the business persons will see when this is rolled out.
So let's talk other sources of revenue. Obviously, one of the things that concerns people is obviously the loss of revenue that the City Council can expect. When you're talking somebody going from paying $180,000 to $60,000, that's significant. What's your contingency plan in terms of being able to ensure that you still have sufficient funds to be able to execute the work that you want to do?
Okay, so we have actually run our numbers and we are calculating a loss as much as $1 million. It may not be that. Projections are that it's going to be much less, but we've calculated a loss as great as that. We have been, over the last year, consulting with taxi operators, and we've been working with them for them to start paying fees. Many of them have started to pay fees, and in exchange for that, we are enforcing their preferential parking rates. That's going to net us, if all of them comply, $500,000. We're also selling personalized driving plates, license plate. And we're selling 500 of those at $1,000. If we sell out all of those, that's another 500,000. So that's our $1 million right there, which is our buffer zone.
Okay.
We also have draft legislation that we have put forward through our line ministry, the Ministry of Local Government, for onward submission to the Ministry of Transport for increases in traffic fees. So that when you're talking about a ticket of $50, that's not a sufficient deterrent. So that part of our calculation also is that we could increase some of these fees, which are very low. I mean, in a growing city, we want greater compliance. So that we have put in place a series of things which will ensure that we can comfortably make the shortfall. But on a whole, the philosophy of this is that we would benefit by volume, that you will have more businesses back in Belize City, that you will have more businesses starting up, and you will generate more taxes. You can see the Northern Highway being developed. And we have 6 high-rise plans for people wanting to build buildings along that highway greater than 6 stories. And each of those people will pay property taxes, they will pay trade license because businesses will be operated in there. So that what we're saying is that if we have these reductions in trade license, which are rational and strategic, if we spend in infrastructure and if we put in place other ease of business protocols, the municipality can double its tax inflow because you will benefit from volume rather than taxing the few people.
You've also been a bit competing in terms of the rates that businesses have to pay when they move outside of the city limits versus within Belize City. Do you feel that this will be enough of an incentive to kind of have the businesses become more centralized within Belize City?
I think it will be. And one of the things that I just want to point out quickly is that this is a part of a series of development strategies. The municipal bond and the infrastructure is one of them. One of the advantages of Belize City as a city is that it's very compact. The road network is relatively good. It's easy to get around. If you go to Ladyville, yes, you don't pay trade license, yes, you don't pay property taxes, but the roads are bad. So that what we are saying is that we want on a whole to create an environment with various policies and structures in place that encourage people to come back into Belize City or to open up businesses within Belize City. And I think on a whole we will benefit, and residents of Belize City will benefit. Another greater sell is that I believe that the reform has created a great degree of goodwill between the private sector and the various arms of government, the central government and the municipality, so that you can see that you have a municipality that's willing to work with the private sector and do things that promote private sector growth. And that itself engenders a kind of development and partnership and growth and strategies that bodes well for a city.
You know, this is quite the undertaking, and I can imagine it's definitely going to affect the entire Belize City, and even people coming into Belize City. And for a lot of people, when they go to the city council, or they go to wherever the municipality office is, sometimes you get to the desk and the people there don't know what you're talking about. So talk to us a little bit about the change management that's taking place internally.
Well, one of the things that we have done is that we created what is called the Local Economic Development Unit. This was actually first just one person, and now we have 3 people. We have a business help desk at the City Council, so that if you want information about trade license or any kind of business setup within Belize City, there's a person who is trained to deal with you. We are also working very closely with the Small Business Development Unit of Bell Trade, and we recently signed a MOU with them, so that we're actually working in partnership so that any person who comes to the municipality can get ready customer service assistance that could direct them in the proper way. One of the things that I've been very concerned about is if you want to start a business in Belize, you have to deal with administrative agencies, and that's 6 different offices. I go here, I go there, I go all over the place. We want to really localize that in the municipality, because we feel that the municipality is the proper place where it could be a one-stop shop, and this help desk and the Local Economic Development Unit is supposed to provide that, so that if you go to our leader at City Council, that person will have all the forms, that person will have social security information, business tax information, sales tax information, so that they can actually make it easier. If you're dealing with somebody who is a small business owner, more than likely, and I talk about somebody who maybe wants to set up a bakery, they want to set up a restaurant, a lounge, something like that. They may have a vision for their business, but they don't necessarily know how to navigate the bureaucracy of the government system. And as you rightly said, it could be very frustrating. so that we want to, as part of the overall rollout, make it very easy for somebody just to say, okay, then it is frustrating, but at least you're going to have a friend in at the municipality who can help you and walk you through the process. And we've gotten good feedback thus far on the few persons who have utilized those services.
I know that the e-governance initiative is quite still fresh and new, and because I hear you talk about forums, and I'm just thinking, okay, that's it's progressive what we're doing right now, but the forums are still. So talk to us a little bit about how the city council would, try to merge with that whole initiative.
Well, I think that that's excellent, and I think that the overall point is to make government more responsive and more accountable.
Yeah.
One of the things that we have done under the leadership of Councillor Bernard Pitts is that we've put a lot of our services online, so that you can get a driver's license online, you can apply for any trade license or any fee online. We've put the trade license roll and the property tax roll online, so that if you want to check how much property taxes you owe, you can actually check that information online. I was on a talk show and I did it quite speedily because somebody was saying their neighbor was paying far less than them, and I could have checked that information, and that's open, accessible information to everybody. I think one of the problems that we have had is just promoting the kinds of things that we are doing to make government more accessible. An area that we still need to move ahead with is with respect to these consultations. I think people don't realize the amount of consultations that the City Council actually has. We have a consultation on average now every 2 weeks. So that last 2 weeks we had a consultation about the noise and people were complaining about that. Today we're having another consultation. 2 weeks from now we're having another consultation, so that we are really making sure that we engage with people. And one of the things that people have brought to our attention is that you can have these consultations streamlined on Facebook or some of the new applications, so that people could be sitting at their home and they could be engaging with the mayor of
that would be
councils
good.
and giving it, so that those are things that we are looking at right now, so that people can have more of an input in what we're doing.
Now I want to take the opportunity, quickly running out of time,
Sure.
but let's talk a bit about the zoning, because obviously this is becoming an issue for quite a number of people. There are those who are in total agreement with the enforcement of the regulations for entertainment purposes, and there are those who are greatly against it. One of the criticisms I do have to say, obviously, or what we heard in the House meeting on Friday, is how involved central government is in this process, and I want you to be able to respond to that.
Okay. Well, the first thing that I want to say is that you cannot be not in agreement with the enforcement of the law. That's what I was saying. So that we had a consultation on this. I think it was a very spirited consultation, and it boded well for our democratic process, that you had people from different parties, you had people from different streams of thought, residents, businesses, and so forth, regulatory agencies, and all of them were talking about an issue which affects all of us, noise. And with respect to the issue of the enforcement of the law, I've made that clear that that is not the subject of discussion. I don't make the law. So that to the extent that the law says that there are time limits for the closure of premises, that if you would have extensions, the premises has to be soundproof. If you want to have a nightclub, that nightclub has to be structured in a certain way. All of these things are clearly articulated in the law, and I think that as a municipality, what we need to do is that we need to enforce the law. With respect to the aspects of it that we can change, I have really coined this in a planning framework. We want Belize City to grow. People have talked about the entertainment zone. That's something that we're committed towards developing. I like going to Thirsty Thursdays and the other establishments along Marine Parade. I go to BTL Park every weekend. I've gone to Pier 1 on numerous occasions. We've had city council functions there. So that the idea is not necessarily that anyone wants to close any business or we want to make it very difficult, but it's how do we better plan this so that there is a area of sustainability. And what we need to recognize is that if we want these areas, and we've developed the entire waterfront because that's mentioned in our master plan, is how do you program all of these things so that you take into account all concerns. And it's difficult choices. Clearly, it's not something that's easy because Belize City is not a planned city. So that when you're making decisions now after everything has been built, people would be affected. But the basic bottom line is that if there are existing laws, those laws must be enforced. one of the things we're very excited about is that there are 3 new businesses that are going along there,
Yeah.
restaurants, very, very nice establishment. We are encouraging those areas, but we're talking about issues of security,
Yeah.
parking, and then also noise abatement. So
Yeah.
our point is that we're listening to you, but we need to plan the area.
Yeah.
Bring us an idea in terms of how we can deal with the planning. One of the things that we're doing is that we're setting up a committee to better deal with the zoning of that area. You mentioned a good point, Marlene, that our overall vision is that Belize City should develop along 2 zones. The Northern Highway, and that is the new commercial business district for Belize City. That area has to be zoned. And then you would have the historic tourism, entertainment, waterfront, and we would want this from bridge to bridge, from the 6 Mile Bridge on the Western Highway to the 6 Mile Bridge on the Northern Highway. And you're seeing that we're spending on interventions all along there. There's a reason why we invested in BTL Park, in Memorial Park, in Battlefield Park, that we're doing the commercial center, because we want the waterfront to develop for the benefit of everybody, but we need to plan that area.
Now, in terms of the regulations and putting them forward to Cabinet, the Prime Minister has said that he hasn't received them. Obviously, this is something that you have been speaking about, the issue of zoning. You've been doing consultations and hearing from the residents. What is your plan in terms of being able to push for specific zoning regulations, even within these 2 areas?
Well, we have draft legislation. I know that we have worked with the area of Kings Park. The residents actually put together a draft. We have worked with them. We've had 4 consultations on that specifically. I have met with the Ministry of Local Government. I've met with the CEO. We have persons, including Ms. Margaret McKenzie from the City Council, who have been engaging with the Solicitor General's department, so that when we receive that information, we send it onwards in terms of considerations. So that this is something which we are lobbying for quite aggressively. We are pushing forward. But one of the things that I always mention, and I mentioned this at the consultation, the emphasis on lobbying and agitating for positive change is not the responsibility of the mayor. That's what you vote for. So that when you vote for an issue. And during the period of elections, you are actually supposed to be agitating for a certain thing. So that when we have these consultations, sometimes we have to bribe people for attend with food and so forth. At very few occasions, we have more than 100 people. But that's your government at work. That is where decisions are taking place. People were saying, well, why is it that you are talking about enforcement now in terms of the laws and so forth? Because those were the people who were at the consultation, and that was the decision that they wanted. So that what we're saying is that the zoning doesn't necessarily come from the City Council. For us to have zoning, because it's altering land usage, you have to have a consensus. And one of the things that we are very, very careful on is to ensure that whatever we move forward with, there is a great degree, and I mean 75%, in terms of support from the community, from residents, from the stakeholders, before we move forward with a plan.
Mayor Vela, can you please, I want you to be able to address this issue, because what we've seen with the particular issue with the entertainment zones and the enforcement of regulations is that it has become a political issue, with one of the residents, Senator Valerie Woods, becoming victimized in the process. What are your thoughts on this issue? Is this a political issue?
Well, I don't know in relation to victimize, but we would.
Well, there are currently ads running, and there are the comic strips about her flip-flopping on positions. Okay. What I'm saying is this is an issue that you have been speaking about. I remember when you were putting the definitive closing time on the entertainment area, on the night spots. But when we talk about the entertainment zone now, a lot of it has been skewed to be a political issue, more so than being in the interest of whether residents, businesses, or the overall city.
Yeah. Let me speak for myself, because I can only speak for myself. This is never and has never been a political issue. I have heard people say, well, it's because you want to run in Caribbean shores. This is not about that. We've always been talking about the development of certain zones along Belize City. I was on the last occasion talking about the Caribbean Urban Forum when the last time I was here. This is part of planning, and this is part of the economic development of Belize City. Yeah. the consultation I felt was very helpful. I was sitting at that consultation, chairing the consultation, and I thought that that was a perfect moment in our democracy, that you have people from different political parties voicing their views. You had residents. I was at one point very impressed. Sometimes we had to, at occasions, we had to just be cautious because somebody was mentioning a comment as a resident, and right next to them was the business owner who they're complaining is blasting their music. That's democracy at work, and those are processes that we find very useful for us to make a decision because it's informed. This consultation that we had was attended to by all stakeholders, residents, business, municipality, the police, other entities. And at the end of it, it's useful for us to get a sense, you know what, this is what the consensus was coming forward. We need to put in place certain plans. We need to make sure that the area is properly zoned, properly accessible. We need to ensure that parking concerns. One of the things that I was very appreciative of is that none of the residents said that they wanted to shut down any business. The only thing that they indicated is that, you know what, I want notice in relation to large concerts. I want there to be issues dealt with relation to parking because people park on the back street. And people rightly mentioned the point in relation to, well, I can't drive out of my yard. Say, for example, I have a heart attack in the morning and somebody's at a club and they park in front of my garage. That's a real public health issue. And we need to deal with it. And I'm telling you that we're dealing with it from an apolitical, neutral, objective point of view because that is how we conduct business at City Council. I don't know in relation to any victimization. I don't know in relation to some people were texting me about this or that or whatever. But I can tell you with respect to what I do at City Council, it has always been from the point of view of ensuring that we have proper policies in place so that everybody can benefit from the system.
You know, that's very interesting because all that was running through my head as you're talking about this is it's a very democratic process. It's a testament to what a democracy should look like. When you look at the Caribbean, you look at Trinidad, there's the Avenue. You look at in Barbados, there's St. Lawrence Gap. In Jamaica, you have, you know, downtown New Kingston, and in Belize, what do we have? And I think that this is very progressive, and I think that it's an amazing initiative. It speaks to our development as a very small, we're just, you know, finding our feet as a country, and that's a great thing.
But it has to be done, as you said.
Well, I was driving along Marine Parade and I saw this Midtown Bar and Grill. Very nice. That actually reminds me of places that I've seen in the United States. I was remarking to my wife that that's a place that I want to take you when this place opens. The point though is that we want to ensure that those places are properly organized, parking, planning, crime, security, noise also, so that it's there for the benefit of everybody.
So what you're clearly saying is that it is not the shutdown of entertainment spots, it's not that concerts won't be held, it's that there is going to be a mechanism in place for these things to take place.
And I was very clear that as a result, and I think that there was a bit of misinformation, no business has been closed down. We have taken no decision in relation to closures. One of the things that we have done is that we have said that if you have existing laws, your basic expectation is that the laws will be enforced. So that if there are laws on extensions and there are laws which require that premises be soundproof, those places have to be soundproof. I actually was quite impressed because we got written confirmation that a premises in the area which previously was not soundproof will now comply with the law and be soundproof. Those are areas that we're moving forward. We want the open air facility, but man, no blast me Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And I was surprised at the consultation. I found out that it happens Sunday night up to 12 o'clock midnight. After go to work Monday morning, that's kind of an unreasonable balance in a developing society. And what we're saying is that you have to strike the balance, and the balance is struck when we have these consultations and we have responsible decision making.
Okay, and Mayor Bradley, before we leave, we can't not talk a bit about March 2018 and your own political aspirations moving into the next municipal elections.
What's there to talk about? I mean,
you'll be running for mayor once again?
Well, I mean, I had indicated that these are certain calculations that one makes with primarily their family, and then also other considerations, stuff that we have done. One takes an assessment in relation to what you've done. Clearly, I think that we have done some good. We've also done some bad as well. But primarily in terms of, I think that deadline is yet to come. and like I have to ensure that really like my family is the primary consideration in terms of going forward.
So at this point, you're undecided.
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for at least telling us that.
Thank you.
We appreciate you stopping in. There were several other issues we wanted to get at, but we're out of time. And of course, I believe that the trade license reform is one that has been a long-standing issue that obviously reached a point of resolution. So good job on that. And thank you for stopping in and sharing
Thank you
all the
always.
details.
Thank you always.
All right. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll be talking to friends supporting the Anglican Diocese of Belize. This is a group from New York, and they're going to be telling us about the work that they've been doing here in Belize. Stay tuned.